Welcome to the Coach Debbie Potts Show, where high performers learn how to stop guessing and start aging stronger, not slower. Your host is Coach Debbie Potts, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, metabolic health coach, and host of this show. Here, we dive into the why behind fatigue, stubborn weight, hormone chaos, gut issues, and declining performance. Using real data, functional lab testing, metabolism analysis, and simple daily habits that actually move the needle. Whether you're an endurance athlete, an executive, or simply committed to becoming your strongest future you, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hey, Debbie Potts, and I am having another great guest on the show today, Dr. Kenneth Ro. And I always love meeting new people that are from the medical doctor background, had this extensive training, as Dr. Kenneth Ro is a physician who worked in the ER and has merged into the space of functional medicine and root cause analysis and looking at nutrition, exercise, lifestyle habits. So today's conversation is with Dr. Ro. He works with high performing men. And I know a lot of people are talking about women, perimenopause, postmenopause, but I really want to find more experts helping men, because men are struggling as well in middle age and need to take ownership of their health as well as women to improve their future self. Especially women tend to outlive men. So guys, this is for you. Dr. Ro helps these high performing men that are listening hopefully to this show, and that you need to recognize the warning signs earlier in life before dysfunction becomes disease through his precision physician-led health approach and his reclaim method. So today I want to dive into why so many successful men lose their energy, their focus, their resilience, and edge in middle age, even when they are doing all the right things. Similar to what I say for my client and my avatar client, and really working on understanding the role of metabolism, stress physiology, recovery, long-term health, and performance gains as we age. So this is something that I love talking about, and I'm excited to talk to Dr. Ro because he says your prime is not behind you and it is something you can reclaim intentionally. And that's really in alignment with my own belief that I don't think that we should be striving to thrive as we age, to live our second half of our life as our best half of our life, right? We're saving up for retirement, getting that 401k investment each month. We're putting a lot into our future self financially. But what are you doing to put deposits into your health bank account? If you're going to be retired and struggling and having all these health issues, why do we do what we do now to put all that money away to retire? I really believe we should be taking ownership of our health in middle age, and that should be a priority of everyone. And I'm on a mission to help you understand the why behind that, because everything feels fine now. So you think, oh, I'm healthy. Why should I bother? Are you healthy? Are you fit and healthy on the inside and out? And that's why I, as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, FDN, we are health investigators. We are investigating what's going on under the hood, testing and not guessing, and correlating all this information together. We're picking up clues, looking at external stressors and hidden sources of those internal chronic stressors that all accumulate into that peak of stress. So hopefully this conversation today with Dr. Kenneth will help spark an interest in your own motivation to take ownership of your health, to test and not guess. Are you really healthy? And what are some areas of opportunity for you to work on now? And I look at things in order of operation. As a nutritional therapy practitioner, we're trained to work north to south. So if you have problems down in, say, your colon, your large intestine, we want to understand the why. So let's keep working backwards. Why does that happen? All right. What happens before that? Before that. And starting from the northern point on nutrition, for example, what we eat, how we eat, how we break that food down. How's our nervous system? How resilient are you? How mindful are you? Are you in safety mode or are you really in survival mode? Are you running from that lion, tiger, saber-toothed tiger all day long? So working on addressing you, the whole you from the inside out, I think is so important as we age. And this is a passion for myself. So let me bring on Dr. Kenneth and we'll see what he has to say and why. Okay, Dr. Ro, I am looking forward to this great conversation because, as we're just saying, we're both on similar missions to help people understand how to take ownership of their health today to be their best self in the future. So I am excited to go deep dive with you into your why, your mindset, your goals.
I'm excited too, Debbie. Thanks for having me.
So tell us, you've been decades in the emergency medicine as a physician and realized, from your own experience, I was reading over your book. It's so fascinating how stress, I think, and personal health issues can be related together and bring you to the ER to bring you to where you are today. Give us a kind of a little summary of your journey, your mission.
Debbie, it took me a while to really connect those dots because as an ER physician, the first, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years at least, you're trying to be competent. You are trying to um, be very competent with your decision making and just the number of patients that you see on every shift. It's stressful. You are truly in survival mode at that phase of the game. Your operating system is one of sustained excellence and competence and trying to grow and continuing in education. After I got that level, 10 or so years in, it I started thinking about some different questions. And those questions were, I keep seeing the same thing over and over again. It's almost cliche. There are 50-year-old men coming in with heart attacks, 40-year-old men coming in with heart attacks. Why is that? Is that, at first I didn't really think about it deeply. It was more like, well, maybe bad genetics, or certainly lifestyle contributed to it. But I started asking the questions, what if we could go back in time 5 years, 10 years ago from this gentleman that just came in with a massive MI? And what could have we done differently? What sort of knowledge, what sort of environment, what sort of goals, or what sort of culture? So I started looking at all these questions. And, you know, the first thing that I came, the first conclusion that I came to was that, yes, there are a lot of things that we are not providing our patients as doctors, as the medical field. Because as you well know, the medical field, it's either threshold or consequence. So we're not going to treat a diabetic, but we're not going to call him a diabetic patient. We'll call him pre-diabetic. And as long as he stays below a certain hemoglobin A1C number, it's going to be lifestyle and diet. No medications, no therapies, and also kind of the doctors and the providers are all busy, right? You get to see your doc provider once a year. That's just not enough time. That's not enough feedback. That's just not enough to prevent a trajectory that's going sideways and going the wrong way. So we have a system that's reactive. And there went my there went my feed. Let me.
So let's jump to from being in the ER. How did you get towards transitioning out of there into looking at more of a holistic approach to helping people live their best life?
Yeah, Debbie, great question. And I mean, ER doctor, 35 years now and counting, and very comfortable in that arena. But the questions were just so, they really got to me that where I just said, hey, what are we doing about prevention? What are we doing about keeping these bad outcomes from happening? And it took my own health scare to kind of really move the needle. 8 years ago, I had my own health scare. I became a patient, and as a health professional, once you become a patient, it makes you a better doctor. It makes you a better provider because you really start understanding empathy and the patient's point of view. So my my conclusion was that we're not doing anything for prevention. We're not doing anything about education. We're allowing people to get on these fads and follow these influencers. This diet is better than that diet. I mean, we've been all through it, but nobody is really challenging the system because it's outside of it to really check things that matter, biomarkers, track sleep, talk about foundational issues of health. And I just finally said, look, I'm not complete in what I want to do with my life. I came across that epiphany, and then my second epiphany was that am I really part of the problem here as a physician, rather than being part of the solution? Um, and my answer to that question was unfortunately yes, brutal honesty. I also said that you can do both. I mean, you're in the ER, you're doing something that you need to do. I mean, people, once they get to the ER, they need you, obviously. But what can you also do to try to prevent people from coming to the ER? How can we really come full circle and really promote health and, promote being having vitality? Debbie, it's something I always say. We get so caught up in survival. We get so caught up in just being alive. Just we forget about what it means to be alive. We get so caught up in the stress of the day, the doom scrolling at night, that we never give ourselves time to just really be part of life, to really be present. I know it's an overused word, but it's it's extremely important to understand that.
Mhm.
200,000 years ago, we didn't have all these other stressors or anything that we do today. It's a different world today, and we have to evolve. Our bodies and our mind have to evolve because, you know, our operating system, our stress response, that hasn't changed in 200,000 years. So we have to rectify that. I mean, it's a different world now, much different than it even was 20 years ago. So we have to understand that, and then we have to also use the tools that we have to really benefit us. But there's some other things too that are kind of double-edged swords, and I'll get into that later.
So how did you transition to what you're doing now from ER, medical doctor role? How do you educate yourself, I guess, to think outside of that box that you're taught in med school?
So deep dive, really got into biohacking, which is really just optimization. I had my own. I'm a guy, so I check my testosterone levels. I went from 780 one year to 250 the next year, and then when I rechecked it, the standard two other times, they plummeted downwards, 140, 150. Now, mind you, this was a time when I was very active, keto diet, just working out at 5 o'clock in the morning before I went in for my ER shift at 7. Working out at 5 almost every day. So there might have been some overtraining there. Certainly, there was a lot of oxidative stress. There were a lot of things that were happening where I was successful on the outside, both in my career and also in the way that other people perceived me, but I was eroding on the inside.
How do you
You
feel
know,
that oxidative stress plays a role in that? That doesn't get discussed enough, I think.
it doesn't get discussed at all. I think it's very important because when we talk about the stress response, we're going to talk about chronic stress. I mean, acute stress, that's great. That's what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have cycles of stress and relaxation and recovery. But the problem with our world is not necessarily that we're overstressed, uh, but we're under recovered. We're not going through those cycles that we're supposed to go through. We know about circadian rhythms. We also know about quotidian rhythms that are, just throughout the day, you have like four different rhythms. And we're always trying to micromanage our feelings and our energy levels. Because let me give you an example. You wake up in the morning and you have brain fog. Oh man, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I need more energy. So you reach for that cup of coffee. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You've had a fairly rushed or big lunch. You're working, you're grinding, and you just hit the wall. You become a zombie, right? 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, I need to change this. I don't need to feel like a zombie. I don't like feeling like a zombie. So in our society, Debbie, we place this high emphasis on being on all the time. We have to have energy. We have to feel like we can conquer the world, or else something's wrong with us.
Yeah,
There's nothing
you
wrong
feel
with us.
guilt. You feel
Yeah.
guilty, I think, too, if you're speaking to the high performers that we thrive on chaos, more is better, and there's that type AAA driven personality that if you're not doing something, you feel lazy, you feel guilty, you feel unworthy and bad about yourself.
And that is 100% correct. I mean, being bored is not an option. And then now even younger folks, I mean, it happens in older folks too. It's FOMO, right? I mean, it's like if I'm not feeling dopamine surges of energy all the time, I must be missing out on something. Or, when I go on social media, everybody else is doing all these crazy things, and why aren't I doing that? What's wrong with me? So yeah, you start building up guilt and shame, and the thing is that builds up so gradually. It's so insidious. It just creeps up on you. You don't even know it's there uh, until you're able to until something happens, until you have a health scare,
Yeah.
or until you get with somebody who can help you professionally, or you read some things that can kind of tap you into your feelings. Your body. We have this bias that our brain. It's a top-down control that our brain is so incredible. No computer can even match it. That the brain is in control of everything. And what I've really found over the years, it's completely different. I mean, we have a bottoms up sort of uh, way that our body works. Our body gives us signals to our brain, and our brain is supposed to allocate resources or try to make decisions to really help the body. We have more signals coming in from the gut than we have coming down from the brain to the gut. So the brain really depends on our senses and our emotions and our feelings and all this that gets stored up over years and years, unless it gets rectified every night, which is supposed to happen during a nice night of sleep, which is something that is another topic as well. People completely diminish it and don't understand what it's for.
Well, I think that's part of the thing you said, the doom scrolling. And I find that the people at the gym in the morning when I go at 5:15 a.m. I'm an early riser, but go to bed early. The amount of time people are scrolling, even when they're just supposed to be doing one thing, they're always scrolling, they're always just multitasking. So I think for the brain, we're training that brain neuroplasticity to always be activated in 10 different ways. And as you said before bed, that people are scrolling, the doom scrolling. And it's interesting how many people do that. It's almost a first place to start with someone to help them feel better is cut down your time on social media. The new thing we have to add to the protocol.
Yeah, it's a distraction epidemic, right? And in neuroscience, they call it the intentional blink, the attentional blink, not intentional blink. That's why you don't multitask, because if you can't focus on one thing at a time sequentially, that there's a certain refractory period that your brain just is not going to be amenable to input. And think of it this way. I mean, your heart beats 80,000 times a day, but it just doesn't work 80,000 times a day. Built into your heartbeat is a relaxation phase, which lasts greater than 50% of the contraction phase. So your body, I can give you all these examples where your body has its own built-in recovery, refractory periods for neurons and neurological impulses, refractory periods for muscle protein synthesis, because our bodies understand that there is a cycle of building, of processing, and then also of just being able to relax and recover from anything that it does. But consciously, we don't do that. We're the only ones that can make a conscious choice to say, okay, I choose to be stimulated at this time. And in today's world, it's just so easy. It's just so you have to make a conscious effort to be disconnected. Um, but I will say that the more you take into those uh, intentional, mindful, disconnected moments, the more energy you're going to have to be on when you need to be on.
So what made you focus on helping people with this? And as you cater more to middle-aged men, high performers, they're losing their edge as they age, you say? Tell me kind of why you focus on that.
Well, I think it's a lot of it was just my own personal journey, right? And I kept thinking, can I come up with a system where I applied a lot of the successes and also learned from a lot of the failures of my own personal journey to other people? So I did start treating some patients, some of my friends and my families. We had their wearables, information, knowledge, specific tests, uh, VO2 max testing, DEXA scans, if you wanted to go that way and really look at capacity and body composition. Um, and I was very successful. But, Debbie, I was very successful because these people were my friends and my family. So I think there was already trust and connection embedded into that relationship. So I got to thinking, um, you can get anyone to do biomarkers. You can go test your VO2 max anywhere. You can get a full body MRI. Just ask your doctor. They could do that. There are companies that will do these things for you. But where's the gap? The gap is really the guy who's sitting there going, I have my doctor, I have my financial advisor, I have my estate lawyer, I have my family, and I see my doctor once a year. I've got a good, I've got feedback at work from all my C-level executives. I can look at numbers weekly, quarterly, and hit my goals. But I'm not doing that same thing with my body and my mind and my identity. So that's what I really thought about it for a long time. I said, where's the gap? You know, and I talk about it too in a lot of my articles. Midlife is medicine's biggest blind spot. And that's the gap. That's the gap because when you're young, there's a certain physiology that you have, right? I mean, you're young, you're recovering. I mean, you can just go out and gain muscle, you can party and be fine the next day, and the recovery, the capacity is just amazing. Something happens though when you get older, as part of the aging process or whatever accumulated toxins. You can name a bunch of different things. The only thing that doesn't change is that you continue in that success mode and you stop listening to your body. As guys, I saw that as just a recurrent theme. I always, one of the things I like to say to my patients is that, the biggest risk factor in medicine is not high blood pressure, it's not diabetes, it's not high cholesterol, it's silence. Because if a guy's not going to open up and he's not going to see a doctor for 20 years, what do you think's going to happen? At the very end, he's going to have a heart attack or a stroke. So we've got to change the culture. We have to change the
Mhm.
conversation. It's just, for guys, we reward successful men with more silence. They're tougher. They're rewarded. They wear it as a badge of honor. I'm tough. I'm successful. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Nobody can tell me what what to do because I'm a success. So we have to get rid of that mindset. It's an ego mindset. It's a machismo mindset. But guys have to really start having conversations with their doctors, with their loved ones, with their peer groups, with their friends about humility, about vulnerability, about honesty. And what they'll find, and what I've found in my practice, is that once a guy opens up, once you just kind of crack that armor, he will open up like it just comes out like a floodgate.
So I find I say the same thing in my world, but as you work on those driven, successful men that feel exhausted, they have this belly fat they've gained, they're losing focus, they just feel off. But same as I hear all the time, people are working hard, they say they're eating healthy, and they're trying to do all the right things, but they're not getting the results because of why do you feel that they're losing their edge?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that are going on there, Debbie. One is they're not getting the right kind of testing or the right kind of feedback or the right kind of follow-up.
Mhm.
You know, we're doing the standard CBC, CMP, cholesterol panel, thyroid, and for a guy, you're going to check his testosterone, right? And that is it. You know, there's nothing else that we're doing. Maybe a quick cardiovascular check with an EKG and a scan. That's it. That's what we do. And you know, that's where we have a another large gap and a blind spot in medicine. We're
Mhm.
simply not doing the right test. We're not going deep enough. You know, we're not asking the right questions. When we talk about, you know, think about your a lot electronic medical record and you know, there's a sleep is under what past social history. I mean, there's not even a moment in time where someone talks about sleep quality or sleep timing. There's certainly nothing that specifically talks about a diet and what diet is good for you. You know, there are specific tests that we can check for inflammatory markers that will say, well, this food is actually inflammatory for you and can be damaging for you. So you know, we have to get more precise and more specific about the things that we measure. I mean,
Mhm.
we are very specific. I mean, imagine if you look at a bank account or you're looking at your taxes and you're just saying, "Oh yeah, whatever." You know, I think I have enough money that I'm not broke. But it's this same kind of vagueness that we're applying to our own bodies, and I think that's something that has to change.
Mhm. Well, that's kind of what I think is it's what you're speaking about is treating systems instead of symptoms is how you look as we do as practitioners. But what are the major systems that men need to pay more attention to if they want to have more energy, more metabolism? Resiliency is my key word of the year, and long-term performance. What else instead of the standard blood work?
Okay, so as far as a system is concerned, the nervous system has to be like one of the biggest ones.
My favorite topic.
Yes, I mean, we just don't, we understand what it takes to be charged up. We don't understand we understand what it's like to be depleted.
Yeah.
We don't have enough knowledge to understand what it takes to be restorative.
Mm.
So, there's sleep, there's biomarkers, oxidative stress completely leads into that. Um, And of course, exercise can create more energy. You know, it's interesting the way the human body is formed. In our culture, we're looking for motivation. We're looking for willpower. We're looking for that feeling. And guess what? The way our body is constructed for 200,000 years is that we are constructed to act first and feel later because we're built for survival. Can you imagine if we saw a woolly mammoth coming our way and we start thinking about it and going, maybe I need to feel something before I start running away? No, the way we're wired is that you're running away first, and then you're going to reassess these feelings later. You know, the important things are important, but you know, in modern life, we don't have those. You know, we now have replaced the woolly mammoth with a troll or that rejection or that email that was worded incorrectly that either we sent out or we received. So we are associating emotional pain with real physical pain, and it lights up the same um, regions of the brain too. And you know, now we've created a situation where stress is just so prevalent. We'll put anything on stress. Well, we'll call it stress. And we just label it as stress. We don't really talk about how to recover from it. But yeah, there are some really nice uh, tried and true neuroscience, psychological things and frameworks that we can do to really help us manage it a lot better.
You talked about something as a hidden balance sheet of health. So, talking about how chronic stress, overworking, the poor recovery, the lifestyle habits all kind of stack together quietly are over time going to impact high performers' leadership skills, their performance in daily life, their relationships, and just pure aging process, longevity in general over time. So, what is the hidden balance sheet that you work on with patients?
So I'm in a balance sheet in general, and I like to appeal to my business guys because they are very well tuned in that. But if they could apply that same sort of acumen to their lives and their minds and their bodies, I think they would be very well served. But essentially, we're talking about a balance sheet is talking about assets and liabilities. We're talking about debt in a global sense. And when I talk about the body and the mind and chronic stress, we're talking about accumulated debt. You're making withdrawals all the time, but are you making any deposits? And how are those deposits going for you anyway? They're definitely not direct deposits. They're not something that's wired in. They're something that you kind of make maybe every now and then. I'm going to take a vacation. Maybe that's going to help. I'm going to get a spa day. Um, but when you really look at that balance, the debt you're so much in debt. Um, you're almost at the stage where you're declaring physical and mental bankruptcy. A lot of times we're going to call that burnout, right? But there were so many things that could have been done upstream that would have prevented you from being in all this debt. And so that's kind of the the analogy that I try to make with health. Start treating your health like you treat your business, or even treat your health like you treat your car.
Mhm.
You're going to find yourself much stronger, and you're going to be better in business because you're going to be making decisions very from a very rejuvenated place rather than a depleted place.
I like that. And that's what we were speaking of earlier in the beginning of the show. And then my intro was, what are we doing today, middle aged, to live our best life, the best, the second half of our life as the best part of our life? Because of all the, you share a lot of your experiences growing up and how we hit middle age. And then once you get past this point of people that have kids and then you're taking care of your parents and we're in this stressful middle age time zone, time of our life, but then it's just that journey ahead of us. And are we putting enough deposits in, not just our bank account so we can retire young and go be able to live and be financially secure? But I think, as you're saying, is what I feel is we're not doing enough deposits into our wellness account and the self-care because we think we're invincible. We think we're fine. We're superhuman. I'm resilient, but we're not when we start to break it down a little bit and look from inside out a different lens and get ahead of it is what I think we're both saying. Like, don't wait until you're struggling. Let's do something now to make sure we don't get to that point. So then you can thrive as you age and not struggle.
And I think that's well, I mean, I think it's culture, right?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it is, I'm going to segue back to technology and AI. I think, there's a lot of the mindset that says, well, medicine's coming a long way. So, do I really need to work that hard? Do I really need to exercise? Isn't there going to be a pill for that at some point in time? Isn't there going to be some procedure or technology that's going to get me what I want? So we're already seeing that, right? I mean, before, we still obviously have a huge obesity problem in our country and westernized civilization. But ever since the advent of GLP-1 agonists, and then the second generation, and now coming up third generation, now that's all changed, right? I mean, the mindset's changed. It's like obesity was like, well, there was body positivity, but now it's just like, well, now now you have superstars and famous people who are on promoting GLP-1s for weight loss. Former superstar athletes. That sends a very mixed message, in my opinion. Now it continues to just go into the quick fix mentality that we have because of the technology. And I don't know, there's like a certain coolness factor about it too. I see that in the ER. It's kind of like, well, you're coming in. It's one of the questions now that you have to ask anybody, not even someone who's overweight. You have to ask anybody, well, are you taking any, Ozempic or Mounjaro? And you wouldn't be surprised, but, I think your viewers would be shocked. Oh, yeah, I'm taking a microdose. Yeah, where are you getting it? I'm getting it from my spa. So completely unregulated. It's a little scary. It's starting to become the Wild West. Um, but we're seeing that uh, integrated into our expectations and our culture. Yeah, there's going to be a shot for that. That's just coming right around the corner. So, I don't really have to do much. I just have to you know, wait for technology to take over. That's going to be my saving grace.
Mhm. But I think it's also looking at, not just a band-aid to fix something, but to the root cause approach and looking at the impacts of, you've shared what I talk about, chronic stress versus acute stress. Now you start to see more burnout and metabolic health issues with men and women, but you're focusing on the men, that are you finding more people stuck in this survival metabolism, survival physiology versus performance and safety?
I completely 100% am. I mean, and why wouldn't you be in a survival distraction dopamine world? I mean, that is what is encouraged. You have to understand when you're doom scrolling, Google AI, that's what they want you to do, right? Because it's profitable for them. They have figured out ways to keep your attention. They have tapped into you know, the mind of the human being that always wants that distraction. I would love to see applications. I mean, there are ones like Calm, meditation apps that are actually very helpful. I would like to see phones being helpful, but too many times I'm seeing 4-year-old kids watching TikTok, and that's all they do. And your 4-year-old kid, you should be running outside and you should be just enjoying the fresh air. There shouldn't be something that demands your attention every few seconds where you're watching another video. So it starts when we're very young, and that whole mindset continues on because I love people watching, right? That's like one of my favorite things I do. So, I'll go to a park, I'll go to a restaurant, and you'll see whole generations of people, either at the table or at the park. They're not talking to each other. They're just looking down on their phones, and they're
Right.
having a whole meal without even talking to each other. I think that's tragic. That's
It
something
is.
that we
It
have
kills
to
me.
change.
Yeah, it's so hard to see at a restaurant, or at a park or anywhere, and you just see people in a group on their phones. I always want to give them my little evil eye. I'm like, what are you guys doing? But I think that's why we get stuck in that survival mode, because we're just always on, we're always connected, and we're never, as you're saying, having that recovery, that downtime, and getting that connection with others without being multitasking. Is people don't realize, I feel that's putting you in that chronic stress mode, and not having the downshifting, as we're saying, control alternate delete the computer and reset and reboot our operating system that we need. I've said for years since I wrote my book, gosh, 2015, it's, working on pushing pause more often during the day, and that we're go, go, go. And I've been saying this since I had my adrenal exhaustion in 2013, when I started my journey of figuring out, okay, why me? Then I realized how it's just gotten worse in our environment if you don't stop, push pause, and take a look around and yourself.
I mean, that's just, you look at your computer, and one of the keys that aren't worn out much at all are Control Alt Delete, right? I mean, everything else is worn out, but not the most important key. And there are a lot of interesting studies. There's a lot of interesting research, but I'll give you a story about um, a gentleman who was a marathon runner, and this was several years ago. He had a pretty severe injury, and he had to take 6 months off from any training. And the Olympics were going to be next year, so he was just like, "Well, forget it. I'm not going to make the Olympics. I'm 6 months on the shelf." So, and of course, he kind of very humanly stated, he was like, "Well, yeah, I was 6 months off from working my usual marathon training, but of course, I could have done upper body. I could have worked on my biceps. I could have worked on my back. There were other things. I could have been in the pool, but because I couldn't do what I wanted to do, I just stopped doing anything." And that's just so true. It's so relevant. When you have an injury, one body part, you just tend to everything else just goes offline because you just don't feel complete. And, but however, after 6 months off, started training. And then 3 months into it, which was 3 months before the Olympics, he posted the best time ever on his 20-mile practice race. And the moral of the story, he ended up winning a silver medal in the Olympics. And he said it was because the problem was that he realized all these years he'd been overtraining, which created oxidative stress and placed a block and a limit on his capacity. And once he was able to shut that off, he was able to have enough recovery to where he could increase his performance. Now, the moral of the story is not take 6 months off. Of course, the moral of the story is to be like your heart and hardwire recovery into every part of your day. And it's easily done. You can do it. There are rules that say you sit in your desk for 30 minutes. You should take 5 minutes to get up, to not be on a screen, to look at other things. So it's little daily habits that you do every day that can make a big, huge difference. But so much of life is so interesting these days, at least online. There are just so many things to look at. And, it's so helpful
Well, with
to unwind. That way
the,
you can be better.
that, I think is important to teach people how, and then do connect that and look for clues and correlations, looking at the hormones, the insulin resistance, and how that impacts your sleep, inflammation, and how men are aging. Put it
Yeah, I
all
think,
together.
oh yeah. Well, I think there's some there's some there's some straightforward parameters to look at, but I think the biggest concepts for a man, because if you're going to ask a man, like, well, or if any man listening to this podcast is saying, okay, well, this is all great information, but where do I start? You know, because that's the sticking point usually. What's my entry point? And I would say, you know, you got to start with honesty. I mean, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you have to listen to everything that we've talked about. And you have to really say, yeah, this applies to me. This is me. I'm successful on the outside and I'm probably eroding on the inside. I don't feel like myself. Um, I don't, I get my testosterone checked and all my blood tests and everything is fine. The doctor tells me I'm fine. See you next year. But I know I'm not fine. I know deep in my heart I'm not. Uh, and then I think the problem, Debbie, is you just get a lot of acceptance. You just accept the lower ceiling and the lower floor. And you just say, I'm just getting older.
I
I can't
hate
fight
that.
it. Yeah,
Pet peeve right there.
there you go.
Excuse, I'm getting older. Just blame the aging process. This is the new normal. That's what I'm trying to break that story.
Exactly. So I will say that aging is inevitable. We're not trying to go back in time. We're not trying to be 20 years old again. Decline is optional.
Yeah.
There's decline that you can manage extremely well. And you'll be so surprised. I don't think we talk enough about the benefits of getting older. First of all, it's a privilege to wake up every day and be alive.
Yeah. True.
because there's so many other people in this world that would want to be in your position who have passed away
Mhm.
or who are not in good health or who are not in a socioeconomic free society. Um, so there are a lot of people that would, when you wake up in the morning, it's a privilege
Yeah.
to be alive. So what are you going to do with that privilege? Are you just going to float through your day, be distracted, or are you really going to honor that? Are you really going to do something to say, hey, I'm going to help be a better person myself, and I'm going to help other people uh, be better people as well. And we're just going to be all in this together. But you really have to take control of that day. And I think the easiest uh, advice that I can give is just really make that first 15 minutes of your day, maybe 30 minutes of your day, just a non-negotiable. I'm going to start my day the way that I want to start it, where I have control. I'm going to be in control of my responses. I'm not going to let the world control me. I'm going to get my sunlight. I'm going to get my hydration. I'm going to get my nutrition. I'm going to start off in this mindset and my body that says, today, just for today, I'm going to be the one that's going to control my emotions, my attitude. I'm going to be a little more patient because I'm going to start my day off with some sunlight. I'm going to start my day off recharging my batteries. And that's going to really make me a better person. It's just going to, you do that day after day. It's just amazing how those little changes can make such a big difference.
So if someone wants to be a health optimizer and get their self back so they can improve what I could say, the future self, future you, can you talk about your, back in the game men program, your reclaim method to help middle-aged men improve how they age?
Absolutely. I mean, I would love to work with any guy that would want that we could work together. But I found that it's if you look at something very systematically, then you won't miss gaps. You won't miss things. So if you look at root causes, and it's just what we talked about. What foods are inflammatory? Are you actually on the diet that's right for you? There might be some genetic component to it as well. What is your environment like? Are you set up for success for your health? Or are you in an office all day long and maybe you work out 1 hour a day, 2 times a week, but then the rest of the time you are very sedentary, sitting in a chair? Um, what sort of identity do you have? Who do you think you really are? And don't tell me that you're your job or your employment. Let's expand your mind out and think about who you really are and what you can contribute to this world. And there's another thing about the second half of life, since we're both very much um, into this, we're kind of in it, right? Um, we got to start putting more positive connotations on getting older. There's all this anti-aging and I don't want to age. Well, let's talk about aging well. Let's talk about how you actually get smarter in a lot of ways. You're cognitively processing things because you recognize patterns better. That's why you always try to, do a crossword puzzle with someone who's older than you and he's whipping you. You're just like, oh, dadgummit, man. Or you're doing trivia, in a group and, it's people that are 10 years older than you that are just running circles around you. You're just like, why is that? Well, as you get older, you get better crystallized knowledge. You actually get smarter in a lot of different ways as you get older. And you're supposed to get wiser, right? You're supposed to have all this lived experience that allows you to accumulate wisdom. And it allows you to be a teacher and a mentor to people who are younger than you, because it's kind of like, what should I do? I'm 20 years old, 30 years old, and you can draw back on your own experiences. That's what life is all about. In a lot of other cultures, you get older, you get revered. People don't look at you as disposable.
Mm.
People want your opinions, and that's the type of person you want to be. When being older is, we need to talk about how getting older is cool. When we
Yeah.
were kids, we wanted to get older. We wanted to be adults, and then we get to be adults, we want to be younger. It's like, well, you can always have a youthful heart and a youthful soul, but you can also be such a big positive contributor to society and your community and yourself. So let's take that stigma off aging. We can understand the aging process because, like I said before, decline is optional. So let's let's age well and fight that decline, but let's embrace getting older because
Yeah.
every day you're getting better.
Well, I say
And that's
embrace aging process, don't blame it. And
yes,
take ownership for the things that you can control. So when I look at a lot of the lists of, why we get wrinkles or why we have this happen or this happen as we age, but losing muscle, for example, all of it was controllable. But maybe one thing that it's so interesting when you look at why things happen and pay attention to the whys and work on that list and work backwards because we lose this, we have less of this made, we have this more breakdown, and it's just like, all right, then do something about it. There's options there. You don't have to just go, oh, okay, that's how it is. But no, we can do something. It's
yeah, I
me.
mean, acceptance is good for certain things, but not for
Yeah,
everything, right? I
exactly.
mean, you just have to, your body, we haven't even tapped into our body's full capacity, both mentally and physically.
Mhm.
So, example, Jack LaLanne,
Mm,
this guy, you said, no, wait a minute, a 70-year-old man's not supposed to be able to drag a, a ship across um, the Hudson or a
yeah.
river with his teeth while he's swimming. How does anybody do that? But you need to be inspired by people every day who are uh, probably a little bit older than you because we I think it's a little funny. It's we talk about longevity. There's a lot of people in the space who are talking about longevity medicine, and a lot of people in the space they're really into the science. But guess what? They're 20 and 30 years old, even 40 years old. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's like I am incredibly pleased that people are talking about longevity early. It's just like talking about investing early. You get compounded interest. But when we really start talking about longevity for people who have actually lived it and who embrace it and, display it. There's a guy, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, he's in Dallas.
Yeah.
He just turned 95, right?
He
And he's
did.
still,
Oh,
yeah, he's
he's
very
my,
active. Yeah.
yeah,
And
my first
he coined the
mentor.
terms aerobics. It's
Hmm.
guys like him, that's where the wisdom's at when we're talking about longevity, because it's like we can talk about it in theory, but isn't it better when it's actually embodied? That's lived experience and wisdom. That's something we can learn from. And I think it takes a certain amount of humility and curiosity to say, you know, I can learn something from everybody. Um, and I can really learn something from someone who has been through it. It's kind of like some guy's going to talk about what's it like being in your 30s and 40s. Well, I want to talk to people that can tell me what is it like in your 60s and 70s because, that's where I am right now. So, and it just opens up another secret sauce about longevity and about health. It's about connection.
Yeah. So last question and we'll wrap up, but what I really believe everything you're talking about is important to add in when you're helping someone with the lab testing. Talk about what labs you choose to do when you're helping people be optimizers.
Okay, so there are a bunch of different lab tests. But, and this is not a plug, my favorite go-to is Vibrant Wellness. It's a foundational Zoomer that it just came up
Yeah.
with. Really good because it starts checking what we really need to check is we need to check gut integrity. Um, we have to see if there's any sort of leaky gut that's going around or inflammation. That is huge for our health, humongous for our health. You know, 90% of the serotonin produced in our body is produced in the gut, not in the brain. All these neurochemicals are essentially modulated or directly produced in the gut and also maintained by the gut brain axis. going up the vagus nerve typically. So that's super important. But inflammation in general, oxidative stress, those need to be tested. Functional hormone testing, not just your testosterone number, which is, almost useless as one number, one snapshot, one point in time. How's it functioning in your body as it relates to the binding globulins or how it functions that it might show up in a urine test. So, a Dutch test or equivalent is very helpful. And of course, yesterday they just changed the nomenclature from polycystic kidney ovarian syndrome to more of a metabolic syndrome, which reflects the whole shift in medicine that talks about the importance of metabolic disease, insulin resistance, as it relates to a lot of different disease states. So I think that's finally getting online. The hormone replacement therapy finally had a black box removed last year. So we're getting there. We're getting there, Debbie.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we have to keep moving forward because, uh, there's a gap. In medicine, there's a gap because it's just the way it's constructed. Everyone is busy. Everyone only has time for 15-minute visits. And we all deserve more than that.
So do you practice at all anymore? And
I do. So I still do ER because
Mhm.
I still love that part of it. And I have a telemedicine practice, back in the game men, um, that where I guide, um, men through my reclaim method. And, I'm starting out. It's small right now, but I'm expanding. So, and I'm also trying to. My vision is also to create a kind of a men's circle group, that's private, that gets men together, and we talk about men issues that we don't want to talk about or open up about in other arenas. So I think that's very helpful too. And I base a lot of what I do. Well, I base everything uh, of what I do on integrity. So I rewrote the Hippocratic Oath, not like a big, huge, it's just 9 points where, I take, do no harm, which I feel like is insufficient for, medicine and our profession. And I changed that mantra into do more good. So that's another project that I'm doing, but it's all integrated with my practice and my articles. But my favorite thing to do is to help men one on one.
Amazing. So tell people where they can find you if they want to learn more.
Well, I think the easiest way to get to me, if you actually want to meet me and talk to me, is back in the game men.com/clarity. That that landing page takes you to the clarity call. But also my overriding website is www.kennethromd.com. And that gives you kind of the whole flavor of what I do and what I hope I can do and how I hope I can help people.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and I was thinking learning more about someone's why, their purpose, their passion to help your mission is really important to know that there's a lot of heart behind there and personal experience in your own journey and trying to do better in the community and pay it forward. So it's keep up. Hopefully people start paying attention and come to you and grow that business.
Thanks a lot, Debbie. A lot of people have mentioned to me that they are almost shocked that an ER doctor would go 35 years and decide to be more of a preventive medicine guy and keep people out of the ER. But, I really feel like for most ER doctors, that's really in their heart.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
So
Good job. We need it. More people doing that. So thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Coach Debbie Pod Show. If today's episode sparked a light bulb moment, that's your sign to stop guessing and start building your personalized future you blueprint. You can learn more or book a discovery call at www.debbiepotts.net. Be sure to follow the show on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Coach Debbie Potts. 2 T's. If this episode helped you, please subscribe, rate, and review. It's how we help more people age with strength, energy, and clarity. Until next time, remember, age is inevitable. How you age is not.